order at 9, what did we got, like 39? All right, first, we call roll call, please.
Jackson,
Here.
Spiz, is absent, notice. Markham,
Here.
Powell, Wiper,
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Beautiful.
We stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we sit down, I'd just like, if we could stand back up and have a moment of silence for Al Brooks Patterson and the passing. Thank you. All right, now let's, first order of business is the approval of the minutes. We need a motion. Motion by Commissioner Jackson. Second by Commissioner Markham. Okay, now we need a voice vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Approval of the agenda. We need either amendments or changes. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Jackson?
All right, motion by Commissioner
Support.
Jackson, supported by Commissioner Wiper. Voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, so moved. It's passed. Public comment. Any public comment here today? Seeing no comment, we'll move on. We'll call that closed and move on to communications. We do have the communication of the fiscal year 2019 through fiscal year 2021, the contingency report, information technology, master plan. I would like to need a motion to receive and file.
So moved. Second Jackson.
All right, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed have it. All right, I mean, the ayes have it. But we also have, I forgot, the building authority minutes dated June 12th. That we receive and file. We need a motion for that.
Well, that's all.
Oh, it's all, I'm sorry.
Yeah, one more.
I didn't read that one, so there's like, well, I'm not
You don't
used to
have
that.
read it.
All right, so now we need, appreciate that, a consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Wiper, supported by Commissioner Markham. So we need a voice vote?
Roll call on these because these are resolutions
Oh, yeah.
going on.
Correct. Roll call.
Jackson,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Wiper,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes. Motion carries. So now we have our regular agenda. We have the first item, the first item is the presentation update fiscal information on radio communication systems, memorandum dated July 29, 2019. Good morning, Mr. Dado.
Good morning. You have before you the updated financial cost analysis as well as the funding approach relating to the radio communications project. The project itself runs about $58 million and will benefit all of the communities within Oakland County in providing a radio communication system uniform for the county that will also tie directly to the Michigan Public Safety Communication System, MPSCS, which is a state system used around the county in each of the counties surrounding us here. This report itself, you've received a number of varieties over the period that we did the negotiations as more information came due. The significance of this particular report is that one of the outstanding significant financial issues involved the EZNet. The EZNet is a connection between the telephone companies and if you will, the dispatch centers, of which there are 20. The EZNet converted copper to fiber. Brought us into the real world. The copper was put in 1963 and worked quite well for a very, very long period of time, but does not transmit certain things like video, data, but does a fine job for voice. It's one of those physics things that I never took up in college. The long and short is the fiber opens it up to a lot more opportunities for communication between those people in the field and those people in the dispatch centers. However, that fiber optic network did cost something to produce and maintain. In our case, we put it out for an RFP. It was a group called PFN was selected. PFN has apparently found a very nice niche. PFN has been successful in 81 and a half counties out of 83 to perform that similar function. So they're very niche oriented telecom. I say a half because they've picked up 2 of the districts out of 4 in Wayne County. The only community now, or the only county now that doesn't have a network similar to the EZNet is Macomb. Macomb doesn't have that effort. They're still in copper. The long and short is why is this important? Well, the cost of the project for EZNet was $3.4 million on the launch and $2.7 million for operations. The difference of 3.4 and 2.7 happened to be some capital items that we were obligated to address. The long and short here is that the approach was we would have to pay as a county that bill, providing the state doesn't reimburse PFN. And the problem was the underlying fund that was to be used to pay PFN was running out of money as of late 2017. The legislature took action, adopted a new billing procedure and effort, brought more money to the table in the winter of 2018. Unfortunately, they took no action after having collected it for about a year, up until about 2 weeks ago. And literally, they had a fair amount of applications that had backlogged, obviously, people wanting reimbursement for their costs for their equivalent EZNets. And to that end, we were approved among other counties. Now, originally, PFN, installed it at $3.4 million for the first year and $2.7 for the next 4. It's a 5-year contract. And to that end, the state stood the cost of the EZNet in the first year. All costs other than about $400,000, which they essentially denied. We had applications. They said, we have to pick up $400,000 out of $3.7 million. Pretty good deal. On the other issue, on the operations for the EZNet, they're going to pick up, the state, will pick up all but $80,000. That was a significant shift in the approach that I ever expected, quite frankly, from the state. I never expected to get anywhere near this dollar amount. But that had a significant impact on the presentations that I had before, where I assumed no support or I assumed full support. Well, we came closer to full support than I ever expected would occur. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that I can hone in on the operating cost and the capital cost of the EZNet now, and with that, come up with a projection on what we need here for bonding on the EZNet, or not on the EZNet, on the radio communications project. And with that, I've included as part of your package a schedule, if you will, that corrects for what we'll have to pay for EZNet to PFN on the unreimbursed cost from the state, the $400,000 in the first year, and $80,000 for operations thereafter. The long and short here is it has reduced the amount of the maximum we could borrow, which was $25 million. That number is now down to 14. So if you actually borrow less money, guess what? Your debt service goes down, and you benefit from that effort. The long and short is I'm projecting 14 million is the need for a bond to be issued sometime probably late in calendar this year or early winter. And the cost of the debt service is estimated. Now, originally I was hoping to get a formal presentation from MCFI, the county's FA, financial advisor. Unfortunately, the board chair has decided to put the FA out for proposal, and obviously I can't very well ask MCFI to perform work on analyzing what the true cost of the debt service and the bond issue cost is if the thing is out for proposal. So to that end, I used what they had previously provided me and projected based on the current rate that we would get. When I originally started with this effort, it was almost 2.5% in interest for a 10-year bond. It's now down to about 1.6. It's gone down 90 basis points in the past 6 months. So to that end, I've also accelerated the costs to immediate payment, whereas I had previously reflected 3 years of deferral of any principal payment, and then the full principal would start in year 4. I've now accelerated that effort. The item called General Fund Appropriations, Jail and Children's Village, is kind of unique. That is the cost of 1.175 million of portable and mobile radios, that, principally portables, if you will, that are required to be purchased by the county, as the functions of those two entities do not comport with the eligibility requirements of the operating surcharge. So we have to pick up those costs ourselves. Now, interestingly enough, in the prior analysis and in the recommended budget, the 2021 year had 1.6 million in estimated costs, which included the 1.175, and the 2022 period also had an appropriation in the recommended budget of 1.6. I've eliminated that down to what we estimate we'll have to pay for the radios for both Children's Village and the jail.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask?
Sure.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit, why the jail and Children's Village don't fit in like everybody else?
Well, this is the operating surcharge is strictly for 911, essentially you have to have the path from the event occurring out in the field or a home or something to the dispatch center, and the dispatch center to the field personnel. There are no field personnel.
Right.
And it's not a 911 call.
Right.
Now, to that end, most of the communication in Children's Village, surprisingly enough, this is an interesting point, they had about 75 radios out of 5,500, 6,000 radios. They represented 8% of our traffic. So most of that traffic was, where are you, what are you doing, that's not 911, not even close. Same thing with the jail. It's communication on movement of prisoners and the like. So it's not eligible for 911 because you're not involving the dispatch centers on those calls. Certainly, if they had an event at the Children's Village or the jail, I don't know, not so much the jail. I mean, they've got plenty of deputies there. They would certainly call from Children's Village to have an officer respond, but that wouldn't qualify for.
So basically, if I understand this right, we want them to have the radios because they're the latest and greatest and gonna fit with everything else, but because of the way they're structured, they're not really 911, so we have to pick up the charges that normally.
Yeah, the jail will actually have, radios that are very low-end radios that are on the P25 system that we're installing. On Children's Village, we have to take them off the system because they generate so much traffic that it's becoming a capacity issue. So they'll be on a Motorola UHF system, but capable of actually communicating immediately to the sheriff's dispatch if there's an event.
Okay, thank you.
Last item here, that I'd like to point out is tower fees. I knocked down the tower fees a bit more, on the revenue, because about the time I was doing this, T-Mobile and Sprint announced a merger. And we have Sprint antennas, and I suppose, T-Mobile antennas on our towers. And as a result, it's likely that we'll lose revenue because when they have an antenna up, they'll either go with the T-Mobile or the Sprint antenna and take the other one down as they address the coverage issues. So I took the revenue down a bit for the tower for the loss of the merger, arising from the merger. The last item here that you might want to consider going forward is because we've done so well with PFN, you might want to lock down this contract for a longer period than 2021, 22, possibly another 5 years. As a result, I've asked PFN to provide a proposal to extend the contract another 5 years. But if we were to do that, a resolution would have to come before the board to get that approval, because it would be beyond the normal period of our purchasing policies. So that proposal from PFN is coming. I don't know whether, I'll get it before things transpire at the county. But it gives you the option here to consider whether or not you want to lock down PFN further. And they are the niche provider of this service around the entire state. PFN would also, we have some interest right now on the west side of the state to join, quite a bit of interest to join Clemis. And the issue would be is how do we get communications to and from them from our central services at the IT. And we could possibly do that through the PFN network if we locked it down. But that's for consideration when we were to get that proposal and sometime well into the future.
Thank you.
It's well into my future.
Do you have any discussion?
Just, when you
Commissioner
talk about accelerating payment of principal earlier than the third or fourth year,
Yeah.
does that make it a better bond sale, or is that?
Yeah, it certainly will. Anytime you defer the payment of principal here, you're gonna lose points on it. But in the prior two analyses, I could not make the cash work in the first 3 years while we were building out the system. And as a result, I took another look at this effort, and I think we could do okay and avoid the deferral of the payment of the principal. That will benefit the county by some amount that I can't determine because I can't talk to a FA.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Markham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you talk a little bit about calendar year 20, or fiscal year 2021, where all of the expenses seem to hit,
Sure.
$31,000 in capital costs and so on? Can you just kind of walk?
Well, that's
me
not
through?
31,000.
I mean,
That's
31 million.
million.
Yeah, I know.
I wish it was 31,000.
I knew what you meant.
I wouldn't have to borrow if it was.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, the year 2021 is probably the year that we're gonna have to start paying for the actual what's called subscriber units, which are the portables and mobiles. And building out 6,000 portables and mobiles is not an easy task, and we'll have to, according to the contract, start paying some amounts on a milestone in 2021 as those things are built out. And deploying 6,000 portables and mobiles in a field, which involves police, fire, EMS, hospitals, ambulance companies, and others, is going to result in an incredible amount of training. We did this once before, and it was spectacular. So we need the radios in hand. And the other piece here, that's for portables. The other piece here is that we have, 1,800 mobile units or more. And one person can install perhaps 3 or 4 a day. And just do the math. It's going to take a long time to get those items installed and up and functional. So we need to begin bringing in the portables and mobiles, and that's about $20 million alone.
One other question I had, so when you had the big presentation for us 3 or 4 months ago now, there was a fire chief from Auburn Hills, I think, who was
Right.
concerned with the units that we're buying for the fire departments. She was not convinced that there'd been
Well, no, that's not true.
coordination. She just brought it up, and I'm just
Right.
asking,
Yeah,
was that approached with her after the meeting, and how did that get resolved?
well, first of all, there was no debate on the actual units themselves, the portables and mobiles. You know, that she supported. What she wanted was, if you will, the ability here for the county to notice the fire halls for an event, essentially turning on lights, waking people up if it's at 3 a.m. in the morning, turning off coffee pots, opening the bay doors, and sending immediately either to a computer, which is called Tear and Run, where the computer produces a listing of all the issues that are associated with that event. So they literally run by the computer, tear that thing off, and hop into their rigs. Alternatively, if the rigs have PCs, it's communicated to the PCs, and they get that in transit. That really isn't a voice function in terms of this effort. This is a voice communication system. That's a data function, which is on the Clemens side of the shop. So that was something she was confused about. Notwithstanding that, we did ask as part, because we knew that Motorola had a function relative to alerting. We decided to, what the heck, toss it in and ask for information on that effort. That effort was about $7 million to do the 104 fire departments, or fire halls, not just simply Auburn Hills. You do it for one, you gotta do it for all. That's just, you know, that's me too. Or, you know, unless some of the folks say, well, I have no interest in that. We did not pursue that or pull the fire halls because the dollar amount was staggeringly higher than we ever expected it to be. Now that's $7 million before we put in connections to the fire hall. You know, and that alone could be spectacular, because that requires 100. We have 31 towers. That would require potentially 104 towers, if not, you know, just, I mean, the connection on the network would be spectacular as well. Now, we agreed, and I don't believe we've yet had any committee established. We agreed to form a committee of folks to explore the alerting function. The committees are being formed now. We have 5 committees that we're assembling. One is policy committee on the radio as to how it's to be used. Another one is encryption, alerting, and there's 2 others. And to that end, the alerting, we're still trying to gather the names to go on the committees. And to that end, I don't believe we've held any meetings to date on any of the 5 committees. The focus right now is to get the project launched, first of all, and secondly, to get an agreement with the Michigan Public Safety Communication System for the interoperability between us and the state. And to that end, we're having some issues with those discussions. That has more importance at this juncture, because we are not going to be able to put in an alerting system for at least a year and a half. And so that has to be pushed off in favor of things we need to get done today, is understanding in the next 6 months the detailed design review that's going, which will be another cut point that may result in further changes here of how we communicate within the county and with those people here who come into our county from the outside or from when we go to other counties. That's more important at this juncture. They haven't had a learning to date, well, they have. I mean, they've got tear and run and a few of the other people, issues, but not probably the full function of what she wants. So we've got a committee. It may or may not be staffed, I don't know. But it will be staffed, and that committee will move forward to explore the issue.
Okay, thank you. And one other quick, just a clarification for me, because I heard things months ago, but, you know, we're still filling our brains here.
This is a tough project.
It is, it is.
It is exceedingly difficult.
So my understanding is we are not requesting matching from the local communities.
That's
We're
correct.
actually gonna pay for this whole deal across the whole county.
That's correct. The entire cost of this effort here is being borne in 3 or 4 different sources. The first principal source is the operating surcharge, obviously.
Right.
That is on the individual telephones. Second piece here is certain funding from the general fund, as we talked about, particularly the jail and the Children's Village. We have some tower revenue that comes in, $300,000-$400,000 on maybe $6 million. And that's the principal sources of funds to cover the operations of this effort.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner White?
And just to follow up on the previous, I recall the Auburn Hills person was from Ann Arbor, and she was making a comparison to Washtenaw County to here, which was not, I don't think, a fair comparison, not the scale wise, and it's really a data issue, not
Yeah,
not a voice issue.
well,
And we're not opposed to it, and technology may make it easier later
you know,
on the alerting.
yeah, I mean, when we consider it, you know, in a year or a year and a half, technology has a tendency to change. What may be 7 million today may be less in the future, but we still have the networking issue to deal with. Interestingly enough, in the Ann Arbor situation, is the locals paid for the entire cost of that project. You know, if they want to drop 7 million on the table plus the networking costs, that makes this project a lot easier.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Jackson?
Just from your last presentation that Commissioner Markham mentioned we had several months ago, the EZUNet charge, cost, or funding was a big concern.
Yes.
And so the fact that we were graced to only have to pick up 400,000 and plus the 480,000 for 2
No.
years?
The first year is 3.4 million, including a $2.7 million operating charge. So there's, call it $700,000 worth of capital. And then the operating costs would be $80,000 a year for the county. So essentially, the $700,000 is now down to $400,000 on the capital cost. And the $2.7 million operating charge, if you will, ongoing, is now down to $80,000 a year. So the 400 is a one-time item, the 80,000 is ongoing.
And so the operation surcharge is what affects those costs? And that surcharge now?
Well, the surcharge is at 42 cents, but this is not the only cost that's rolling through this effort. We have the entire radio system that, operations, if you will, and to fund.
But in speaking of the EZUNet issue, when you came before us before,
Right.
you were relating it to the surcharge
Yes,
in that
because
presentation.
that's because it's being, remember, this is a connection between the telephone companies which maintain the 911 data. So the actual function is you've got an event out in the field, the event calls dispatch. In the interim, that call has gone to the telephone company to pick up 911 data, addresses, if you will, and ships the data to the dispatch center. So, but by the time, in theory, the call, we pick up that phone, that data is sitting on the console of the dispatcher. And the connection is between, if you will, the telephone company and the dispatch for communications. which then goes back to the person making the telephone call.
So in other words, I guess I was just getting at the surcharge being sufficient, for the project at this point.
I need all of the 42 cents right now to cover that effort. Whether you need that in the future is certainly something to be discussed as the data comes in. Now, what I've done, Commissioner, which brings up another point here, is if you look on the analysis, towards the end of, if you will, 2028, I've started putting $5 million a year away from the OPEB freed up cash, as we talked about previously, from the general fund, in order to begin funding dollars for the replacement of the system we're about to replace. It'll probably have roughly a 15 to 18 year useful life. So to that end, that's a decision for the board as to what they want to do longer term as to how to fund that effort. But if I were here, I'd be recommending taking a portion of that money, the $35 million that is freed up in 2028, about 70 to 80% of which will be general fund, and setting money aside to cover the cost of the replacement of the system we're about to install. Because it's gonna have a 15-year life or 18-year life. It's just reality on these systems.
Okay. Any more discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Interrupt you. Sorry about that. Thank you. I appreciate you looking into the PFN, the extension for the betterment of the county. As a negotiator, I understand sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I appreciate you having them put that together for us. And I will say that actually physics was my favorite subject.
I had it in high school. I got through it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Need to receive and file.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call. So I just need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Jackson, supported by Commissioner Wiper. We need a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Thank you. Next agenda item is the Department of Central Resources Aviation Division Airport Land Lease. I'm gonna practice on this one. Mahanan? McMahon? I always get the H, it always messes me up. Helicopter Services Incorporated.
I'll move it.
Moved by Commissioner Wiper, second by Commissioner Jackson. All right, any discussion? Anybody? No presenter? Okay. So then
We could pass it or
yeah,
not?
we'll pass at this moment for,
I've read it. It sounds like,
Yeah, well, I'm on the airport.
Oh, you're on the
chair of
airport, okay,
airport
yeah.
committee, so, yeah, we saw these in the airport committee a couple of weeks ago, and they're basically extending, leases that we've had in the past. So, yeah, I would recommend approving it.
all right. Yeah, I don't see any issue with them either. I just, everybody want a presenter, so I guess we'll move forward. We have a,
We need to
yeah,
vote on it.
call the roll.
Jackson,
Yes?
Markham,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Wiper,
yes.
Miller.
Yes,
Motion
motion carries. So the next agenda item, Department of Central Resources Aviation Division Airport Land Lease, Williams International LLC. We need a motion.
Same deal.
Yeah.
I move it.
Moved by Commissioner Markham,
Support it.
seconded by Commissioner Wiper. Any
In this
discussion?
discussion, it looks like they reserved the right after 2 years to adjust the rent, so.
Yes,
That was,
That's the change.
it's nothing fixed forever.
Right.
Even though it's a 20-year lease, so
all right.
that's all the discussion, yeah.
Any other discussion? No. Please call the roll.
Markham,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Wiper,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. All right, next agenda item is Department of Informational Technology, third quarter 2019, Development Appropriation Transfer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, no worries.
We just passed it. We ain't
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's glad to see you instead of Mike and Phil.
Thank you, yes.
I'm just kidding.
I'll move it.
Playing the
All right.
role of
It's
Mike
been-
and Phil today,
It's
Tammy
been moved by
Shepherd.
Commissioner Wiper, seconded by, did I see Commissioner Jackson. Good morning.
Tammy Shepherd, manager in IT. I'm here to basically request approval of our regular third quarter development appropriation transfer and answer any questions you might have.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Call the roll, please.
Powell,
Yes.
Wyford,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is the Department of Parks and Recreation and Facilities Management approval of Consumers Energy gas line easement at Lion Oaks County Park. We need a motion? Moved by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Stensel, Executive Officer, Oakland County Parks, and Paul Zackhaus from Facilities Maintenance, the Real Estate Coordinator for the county. This is a request that was precipitated by the residents along Old Plank Road, west of the Lion Oaks Park. And Consumers Energy has come to us asking for a easement for the provision of service to these residents. Paul?
The Consumers Energy had residents that are still on propane, and they wanted gas service, so they started this over a year ago. They worked with revising, they initially asked for an easement just within the property line. We asked them to revise it on the property line and outside the line, so it's a 10-foot easement, permanent easement for that gas line. It's gonna be directionally bored, so it doesn't affect, other than those pits, it won't affect the landscaping, fencing, or any trees and bushes along there. We've looked at the easement, worked with them, and are satisfied that this is a easement that works.
Any discussion? I like the directional bore. That's my, that line of work.
That's,
It's actually amazing. So if there's any discussion, call the roll, please.
Wyford,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes. Motion carries.
thank you very much.
So now we have the next agenda item for Facilities Management, Facilities Planning and Engineering, Sheriff's Office, Health and Home Services, North Oakland Health Center, Reception Desk Remodeling Project.
I'll move it.
It's been moved by Commissioner Wiper, seconded by Commissioner Jackson.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ed Joss. I'm the Manager of Facilities Planning and Engineering. I'm here with Lieutenant Sexton
Morning.
with the Sheriff's Office and Leanne with the Health Department. And this is a project that's requested by the Sheriff's Office in conjunction with the Health Department. So I'll let the Lieutenant just explain briefly what the need is for this project, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the construction of it.
Good morning.
Morning.
We're requesting that the desk be reconfigured when you walk into the front doors at the North Oakland Health. Right now, there's a receptionist that sits there, but we wanted to increase the size of that desk to allow a deputy to sit next to the receptionist. So when the customers come in the front door, the first thing that they see is a deputy and then a receptionist that would be able to help them provide direction inside the building. The deputy presence alone will help decrease some of the issues that can occur over there. There's a lot of traffic that comes in and out of that building. So the customers coming in, the first thing they see is a deputy, and that tends to keep the peace. So we're asking for the desk to allow 2 people to sit there and assist with some of the issues. It prevents theft. It just keeps the peace a little bit better. So we're asking for that reconfiguration of that desk to allow for two seats, basically.
And if I could just say one thing, so we, the deputy tends to stand there already for a significant amount of time, just because since those deputies have been in our building, we have seen a significant difference in, I don't wanna say criminal behavior, but people, we've had a couple thefts there, and it really has reduced that number, so it would be really beneficial for him or her, because we do have a couple of female deputies there to sit there in front, so.
And lastly, I'll just mention, this is a fairly small project for us. You can see the dollar amount is just under 60,000. The reason that it's before you is because the funding is out of the capital improvement program. Otherwise, based on the size and the scope and that, normally projects this small don't come before you.
Any discussion?
I just,
Commissioner Markham and
I
Commissioner
was
Hall.
over to that building recently. There are sheriffs, there's at least one sheriff outside typically, is that correct? At least when I was there and walked up, there were a couple of sheriffs standing there.
They tend to do some general patrols in and around the building, out into the parking lot, the walkways leading up to the building. So, there's 2 deputies assigned there.
Okay.
One could be on patrol inside the building while the other is on patrol outside the building.
So we're not looking at adding an officer or a sheriff there, or it's just putting them in a different place?
It's given them a location to have a seat, maybe do some of their work, and be the face when the customers come into the building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jeremy, just one thing on top of that too, is sometimes it gets very busy as people are coming in the door, and that we call her our welcome clerk, has a tendency to get caught up, and so people could be going on the elevator, so it really does help to have 2 people out front when possible, to try to help with some of that traffic control too, so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Powell?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Any other discussion? I think that this is like, if you hear public safety and health is like, makes the most sense ever, right? So, thank you. We need to call the roll, please.
Jackson,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have our next agenda item is the Facility Management, Facilities Planning and Engineering 2019 Roof Replacement Program Projects.
I'll move it.
It's moved by Commissioner Wiper, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Morning.
All right, good morning again. The project before you is part of the capital improvement plan for roof replacements. We are continually monitoring the condition of our roofs, and we prioritize those. For this fiscal year, we've identified 2 roofs that need replacement. The roof of our materials management building, and then a small portion of roof at our gas house. An RFP was sent out for public bid. The lowest responsible roofing contractor for the project is Butcher and Butcher Construction. The budget for the project is just under $353,000. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Go ahead, Commissioner Powell.
Of the 2 contractors, are they Oakland County based?
So we are gonna have, well, let me start by saying this. In your packet, I believe, is the bid summary. There were 4 roofing contractors, I believe, that bid on it. Butcher and Butcher is the main contractor on this project, the roofing company. They are out of Rochester Hills. There are other contractors that we need to do small portions of the work, such as some masonry restoration, some lightning protection. Those contractors, we also worked with an engineer to help with the construction documents in the RFP. So altogether, we'll be using 4 contractors, 2 of which are from Rochester Hills, 1 is from Milford, and 1 is from Novi.
Okay, I'm just making sure they're Oakland
That's right.
County. Good, thank you.
Commissioner Wiper?
Well, I was just gonna say, the existing roofs are over 30 years old, and you got a warranty of 30?
Exactly. Our roofs, these ones included, will be getting a 30-year warranty. The roof on the materials management building expired back in 2010. And the roof on the portion of the gas house that we'll be working on, that warranty expired back in 1997. Those were both 30-year warranties, but luckily they've held up, and with a little bit of maintenance, we've been able to get them this far.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Markham,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have our next agenda item, Economic Development and Community Affairs Resolution amending United States Environmental Protection Agency Brownfield Assessment Consortium Grant and Interlock Agreement. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Good morning.
Good morning. Dan Hunter, Deputy Director with Economic Development, and Brad Hanson, Senior Business Development Representative. What you have before you is an amendment to an interlocal agreement of a very successful grant from the Environmental Protection Agency to work with 6 consortium communities as well as the balance of Oakland County for environmental assessments to look into brownfield situations. So we're getting down to the end of the grant. We will be applying for an extension, and this allows us to pool the dollars and spend the grant throughout the county. So in those 6 communities or any of the communities anywhere for eligible projects that come forward. As I said, it's been very successful to assist with redevelopment, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion? Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. So the 6 communities that are part of the consortium, and then you stated they're part of this as well as any other place in Oakland County, it's more beneficial to be part of the consortium, right? They get first.
They kind of get first crack at it, yeah. They
And
get
could
first.
I'm sorry, could you tell us for the record, what communities those are?
The communities are, Brad, correct, go ahead, Brad.
The 6 communities are Farmington Hills, Ferndale, Madison Heights, Hazel Park, Pontiac, and Southfield.
Wow, those are awesome communities, thank you.
And kind of the reason that they're in the consortium, and this isn't the first grant that we've had like this, is that that's generally our older industrial and our preponderance of brownfield or some site contamination, and that helps us get the grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. But we do have those conditions all over the county, but those communities in the southeast and plus Pontiac, that's our older industrial area.
Yeah, redevelopment is crucial everywhere, but I would say that's those, 2 of those are communities that I represent are crucial. Thank
Yep.
you.
Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Powell,
Yes. Sorry.
Wypert,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If there no other business, here no other business, we'll call the meeting, Economic Growth Infrastructure Committee closed at 10:27.
woo-hoo.
All right.